Hey guys, so at E3, View43 just released a massive campaign and also multiplayer trailer for Halo Infinite. I did not in a million years expect campaign today, but here we are. I'm so happy we got some. So in this video, I'm going to be breaking down all of the campaign stuff from the campaign trailer, and then I'm going to have another video live in a few hours breaking down all of the stuff from the multiplayer trailer. But let's waste no more time and jump into this new Halo Infinite campaign footage. So, as we'd all hoped and dreamt, Bonnie Ross and Joe Staten introduced the footage, and Joe gave us a talk through the campaign stuff at the start. Now, initially he showed us off this area of the Zeta Halo open world. What looks to be a UNSC forward operating base in that ever-iconic Pacific Northwest-inspired forest. Now, he said that this is just part of Zeta Halo, which, of course, is, again, in his words, the largest and most wide-open environment they've ever built for Halo. And I gotta say, all the graphical worries that I had from last year are pretty much gone now. My only issue with the graphics is that at a very, very long distance, they still don't look insane, but to be honest, I don't really care. I think the graphics in this game look absolutely fantastic. Honestly, better than I'd hoped they'd look, really. They look absolutely incredible. The only concern I have with this scene is that, once again, this kind of biome, this like kind of dark Pacific Northwest forest, is the only one that we've seen from Infinite's campaign so far. I'm really hoping that we get other Pacific Northwest biomes like snowy mountains and deserts and other stuff like that in the game, but this scene just looks so good, right? Let's dive into it in a bit more detail. So off in the distance at the start, you can see that incredibly imposing banished stronghold that, of course, we're going to be assaulting. I absolutely adore the brutalist, pardon the pun, architecture of the stronghold and how strongly it contrasts with the beautiful natural world of Zeta Halo. That kind of design philosophy is so very brutish and so very banished. I love it. In the FOB itself, we have some patrolling marines, one with what looks to be an assault rifle, and another with a bulldog, and this bulldog marine is stood at what looks to be a vehicle spawner, or maybe even a pelican pad, where a pelican can like come in and drop off vehicles, but I'll be honest, that kind of switch panel looks like you'd press something on it and then a vehicle would spawn to me, so this is definitely a vehicle spawner of some kind. That mongoose is very nicely placed. And then behind that, we have what looks to also be a weapon spawner as well. Now, here's to me hoping there's a skull that essentially turns that into the mystery box. That would be kind of cool to do sort of semi-randomized runs of the campaign. But it's interesting that we can spawn, or we can what looks to be spawn weapons and vehicles at FOBs. I'm assuming that's how we go and find our loadout before we go and engage the stronghold off in the distance. It's going to be interesting to see how that works, though. Moving further up, we have more marines patrolling outside of this spawning location. One with a sniper, and in front of these marines is what looks to be a banished structure, so maybe the UNSC forward operating bases are built kind of on top of captured and liberated banished bases. I kind of like that idea, honestly. Like the idea of running into like a banished camp that's like 100% banished and liberating it, saving all the marines in it, and then slowly turning it into like a UNSC base. It's kind of the reverse of what the banished do. The banished essentially steal tech and then put their own plating on it, whereas if we were to do this, to take their camp and then put like a UNSC skin over it, it'd be kind of the same thing, just in reverse. We're giving the banished a taste of their own medicine. As the camera rises even more, we get a shot of this green UNSC beam tower, which looks a bit like a radar dish. Now, I imagine this green beam, given how bright it is probably to show that that's a base that you've captured, maybe something like that. And then we also get another shot at the banished stronghold off in the distance, which appears to have some sort of logo on what looks to be a flag or something on the front of it, but I can't make this logo or symbol out. It's not the Hand of Atriox, and it's not the banished, so I'm not particularly sure what this is. But yeah, I just gotta say again, the architecture of this stronghold is so cool. I'm such a big fan of it. The colour, the architecture, the overall design, the way that it contrasts with the natural environment, just mwah, chef's kiss. Oh yeah, one more thing actually. In the top left here, we have this weird kind of thing again that looks like a really big spirit. Now, I'm pretty sure this was in the demo last year, and some people thought that it was ring debris, but it's very clearly banished coloured. So I would hazard a guess that this is a ship of some sort. It looks far too big to be a dropship, but far too small to be like a spaceship, so to speak. So I'll be intrigued to find out what this thing actually is. The camera then pans above the FOB to the top of the cliff where the banished troops have made camp, and on the entry to this camp, there are spikes in the ground with marine armour stuck into them, which is insanely gnarly. This looks so cool. There's a dead grunt here from the past battle in the trees, and also a dead gold brute in the camp. Now, speaking of the camp, in the centre there appears to be some kind of generator-looking thing. To be honest, I have no idea what this thing is or what it does, but it looks to me like a generator of some kind, and there's a grunt chilling right next to it, along with 3 brutes in the camp. Now, if we're going off of Halo 3's ranks, then these brutes appear to be a miner, a captain, and a jump pack brute, and then they're all stood in front of banished covers. Then a pelican flies over, and then, off in the distance, there appears to be another base that looks really UNSC-styled in its architecture, kind of giving me Battle for Middle-earth vibes in the way that the base is designed, with the gate and the watchtower. Not gonna lie, maybe that's just because I've been playing a lot of Battle for Middle-earth recently, but it looks kind of similar to the design of like the Rohan bases from Battle for Middle-earth 1, which is, I don't know, definitely not intentional, but still pretty cool. Right, now, onto the really good stuff. The scene then transitions to Chief stood in what looks to be the pilot's Pelican Bay in space, which I think, when you connect the two together, it looks like this is possibly leading on from the Discover Hope ending. Now, given that Discover Hope was an actual cutscene from Infinite, I don't think it would be that surprising to see this be the continuation of what we saw in 2019. But anyway, as Chief flies through the wreckage of the war against the Banished that we know the UNSC sadly lost, he sees quite a few notable things among the wreckage and the carcasses of the ships. First off, he sees a grunt mule, the name of which we got from, of course, Mega Bloks, which appears to be the grunt that holds weapons on its back, which is pretty cool. He sees a jackal, which again looks great, and then various dead marines, which is quite sombering, honestly. That hit kind of hard, not gonna lie. But then whilst he's in this kind of wreckage, he picks up a fusion coil, throws it, and shoots it with the last bullet in his sidekick to blow his way through his ship. Oh my god, that is such a cool scene. I love that so much. It gave me kind of 2 vibes. The first one was actually the Halo 4 announcement trailer where he does something very similar with a sticky detonator on the Dawn. And also, this is so out there, but it kind of reminded me of like C4 shotting from COD 4, if anyone remembers that. But seeing Chief do this, like lob a fusion coil and then shoot it with the last bullet in a sidekick is so cool. It also gives us a new look at the redesigned sidekick, which I've gotta say, makes my snake solid. It has so much more of a unique silhouette now that it has that undermounted laser on it. I really love this design. Maybe it's the MGS fan in me coming out and loving weapons with undermounted lasers, but I don't know. I think the sidekick honestly looks night and day better now compared to last year. I'm a big fan. He then continues to fly past more grunts and jackals, and I've got to say, even though they're all dead bodies, it's kind of cool seeing like both eras of grunts, as well as Covenant-styled grunts and jackals, and also Banished-styled grunts alongside each other. It's really cool seeing the clash of eras kind of come together. I like that, even if they are just carcasses. But then Cortana starts speaking, and instantly, just like that, the music just turns emotional, and it sounds so good. It instantly changes the mood of the entire trailer in the best way possible. Cortana says, "I need you to understand, there's not much time. If you knew how we were going to die, how would you live your life differently?" Now, I can't help but wonder who Cortana's actually speaking to here. Is it Chief? Is it Dr. Halsey? Or is it someone else? What I do know, though, is that this section of the trailer gives me insane Halo 3 announcement trailer flashbacks. The way that Cortana's, like, kind of in a corrupt way speaking to Chief, and almost telepathic way, kind of. It really reminds me of the Halo 3 announcement trailer where Cortana's, like, glitching out on the screen, talking, like, kind of indirectly about Chief. She also sounds quite haunting as well, which actually makes a lot of sense given the info we find out a few seconds later. Chief then grapples into what appears to be a banished ship, and the scene cuts again to a brand new scene of Chief talking to Cortana. And I say that in air quotes. Now, before we start talking about this Cortana, let's talk about the room they're in first, because it's quite interesting. Now, based on the details in the back of the wall, it appears to be some sort of foreigner area, and also the Cortana says that it's an installation. Now, it looks to me to be very similar to that room in the little kind of end scene of Discover Hope. At least it looks very similar, more so, to the concept art of that room, so I wonder if this cutscene takes place in that room, or one very much like it. Some cool food for thought, but let's get back to talking about Cortana. I'm doing air quotes right now. as is made very obvious, this Cortana is not actually Cortana. It is CTN 453-0 from Discover Hope, and according to Joe Staten, she's called the Weapon. Now, she's very clearly voiced by Jen Taylor, and very clearly sounds a bit like Cortana, but she has a noticeably different speaking pattern to differentiate her. And honestly, I've got to give a massive props to Jen Taylor for that. The voice acting with that, to be able to sound the same, but just completely upend your speaking pattern to make your character sound similar, but also completely different, is absolutely genius. That is a piece of fantastic acting there from Jen. Now, at first I thought maybe the reason she's speaking differently is that the Weapon is a dumb AI, not a smart AI, but the way she talks later on, I don't think so. I'm thinking now that more so it's to maybe, like, noticeably differentiate her from the actual Cortana to both the player, so they don't get confused between which Cortana is the real one, and also to Chief, to kind of make him realise that he doesn't have Cortana with him right now. This is not the Cortana that he knows and loves, it's a different one. The Weapon then goes on to say that the rogue AI Cortana, so Halo 5 Cortana, has been deleted, but she says that it wasn't by her. So the Weapon's initial instructions were to enter the installation, which is that Forerunner room they appear to be in, imitate Cortana, and lock her down for retrieval. Now, this confirms the SPDR anti-Cortana chip theories that we had back in 2019, that the chip that Chief was putting into his helmet had SPDR in it, which is basically like an anti-AI intrusion countermeasure to essentially neutralize and lock down Cortana. Loads of us had that theory back in 2019, it was quite a popular theory, and it's cool to see that we were all kind of right. However, it turns out that Chief's objective was to essentially return Cortana in that chip to the Infinity for deletion. But clearly, he didn't do that. So who deleted Cortana? And further, on successful deployment, aka destruction of Cortana, the Weapon says that her deletion routine was meant to complete, which would essentially just delete the Weapon, but again, clearly, her deletion routine didn't complete, so something stopped it, and then Chief talks about wanting to find out why it was stopped. And then the campaign stuff ends there, so let's dive into some theories, right, and also some lore bits. So, first off, arguably the most glaring thing here is that this entire scenario with Chief and Cortana and the Weapon links back to Cortana's iconic quote from Halo 4.
They'll pair you with another AI. Maybe even another Cortana model if Halsey lets them.
That's not going to happen.
It won't be me. You know that, right?
Now, clearly, this has happened, at least in some capacity, but it's clear that the Weapon isn't actually Cortana. She's almost like an Uncanny Valley version of Cortana, a mirage almost. It is really cool to see this kind of, I'm not going to say a callback, but kind of just how this links to Halo 4 in hindsight. But the most standout detail in this entire scene is the insane parallel between the Weapon and Cortana's relationship, and offensive bias and mendicant bias's relationship. So let me just give you guys a very brief recap. So the Weapon was created with instructions to basically defeat or aid in the defeating of Cortana before self-deleting. She was also very clearly made from the same source as Cortana, Dr. Halsey. Offensive bias was created with instructions to defeat mendicant bias, and was essentially a recreation of him. He was a Metarch level contender class AI, the exact same level and class of AI. Now, what's interesting is that Offensive lacked some of the personality quirks of Mendicant, so he was less creative and independent, and it's also pretty clear that that something similar to this, at least, is the case for the Weapon versus Cortana as well. There's very clearly something missing from the Weapon. She's similar to Cortana, but like I said earlier, it's kind of almost like Uncanny Valley. She's similar, but she's missing certain quirks that make Cortana Cortana. It's very clear that she isn't Cortana, just like as similar as they were, it was very clear that Offensive wasn't Mendicant. Now, given the setting of Halo Infinite, these parallels just make me so unbelievably excited. If they don't reference that kind of face-off between those two, or either of those characters in the game, especially given this, then I will be blown away. It's so clear to me that history in the Halo universe is basically repeating itself. The Weapon is offensive bias, and Cortana is Mendicant Bias. I cannot wait to see how this plays out. Now, speaking of how this plays out, Joe Staten gave us a few words about the campaign over on his article, The Great Journey So Far, on Xbox Wire, where he said, "We are continuing the story of the Master Chief and Cortana from Halo 5, but also telling a story that's welcoming for new players. Cortana's fate is one of Halo Infinite's campaign's big mysteries, and early in the story, you will meet a new UNSC AI, the Weapon, that was created to help stop Cortana, just like Offensive was for Mendicant. Together with the pilot, the Master Chief and the Weapon begin an epic adventure to explore Zeta Halo, defeat the banished forces who control the ring, and unravel even more mysteries along the way." Now that all sounds absolutely fantastic. It's very cool to see that Halo 5's campaign and its story, as bad as they were, are, or at least appear to be getting some sort of closure, and that they aren't just going to be completely dropped for Halo Infinite, because I know that there are some people that were concerned about that. Very clear from what Joe said here that they aren't dropping that storyline. It's not getting just forgotten about. It's gonna play a role in Halo Infinite. And man, I can't wait to find out more. Also, it's going to be really interesting going around Zeta Halo with this kind of Uncanny Valley Cortana. I'm very excited to see how that plays out. Man, I cannot wait for this game's campaign. You guys have no idea how excited I am. But I'm going to bring this one to a close here. The campaign stuff, I mean, needless to say, I'm very happy with all of that. I hope you guys enjoyed it all as well. I'm going to go start editing the multiplayer breakdown now, which will be up in a few hours from this video. So leave a like, turn on the bell on and all that crap that most YouTubers always talk about every video, but I don't. Hit the bell, like, subscribe, leave a comment, let me know your thoughts and all that stuff. And thank you very much for watching. I really do appreciate it. And I'll catch you all in the next one in a few hours.